Hello and welcome back to the Just Follow Joy podcast. My name is Ariana Joy. I'm a human design reader and teacher, and my goal is to make human design accessible and awesome for everyone because I think it can and should be. So I'm really excited to have you here with me today, and not just because this is the first podcast episode in a really long time since I was on a pretty long trip, did not record while I was there, and also, like a pro, didn't record any podcast episodes to go out while I was gone. But I'm also excited because we get to do this first episode back with a real gem of the human design community and in general, who is someone named Dr. Eleanor Haspel-Portner. So if you don't know her, and you might not because she's been MIA from human design for give or take about 20 years, Dr. Eleanor is the founder of the Four World System and the author of, among many books, Beyond Human Design, Turbocharge Your Practice with Integrated Channels from All Four Worlds. So Dr. Eleanor has a very unique background. She has a Ph.D. in psychology from University of Chicago. She's worked in both clinical and research psychology. She's studied like every esoteric system of wisdom under the sun. But in particular, she has a very unique background with human design, which is what we're talking about today, because not only did she personally know, learn from, and work with Ra Uru Hu, who founded the system, she helped create the Dream Rave chart, so she helped map that out. And she also worked to verify human design scientifically and statistically in the 1990s. And during her research, she found which parts were valid statistically, so which parts held up to the claims that HD was making, and also which didn't. And she also came to realize that while many parts of the system were valid, the system itself did seem to be incomplete. And even Ra has said, or had said, he's not here anymore if you did not know, that he felt that while human design was really powerful and it was true, it was probably not the full story yet, at least not as far as he had worked on it. And basically, as a result, Dr. Eleanor created the Four World System to help create what she would call a true integrated chart and help people live at the highest potential with their designs. So this is all what we are talking about today. And Dr. Eleanor, in my humble opinion, is really an integral part to the story of human design. She definitely fills in some of the gaps for us. And she's also someone I respect a lot in general. So I'm really, really excited to share her with you today. And a quick note before you watch this video, I highly recommend grabbing your Noble Energy Wellness Map, which is your integrated Four Worlds human design chart. So this is what your chart looks like in the system that we're going to be talking about today. It shows you all four charts, but all you really need to be looking at to know like your true design in this system is the chart on the bottom left that says total integrated vehicle manifesting life, all time frames. Oh my God, that just sounded like, the way I said that sounded like word salad. Total integrated vehicle manifesting life, all time frames. And another thing, remember, if you like Just Follow Joy, if you love Just Follow Joy, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe below so you never miss a video. But with that said, I'm done blabbing, so let's go talk to Dr. Eleanor. Dr. Eleanor, I'm so happy to have you on, and I'm so happy that I get to share you with all my audience because I think they're going to get so much out of this conversation.
I hope so. I'm glad to be here.
So let's dive right in because you have such a fascinating history with human design as a system, and then creating your own system, the Four Worlds, which you've said before is your true work, is really what you're here to share. And so I do just want to give people some kind of an idea of the context here, like how you came to this, and why you felt sharing the Four Worlds was necessary to like go beyond human design and have a system that did that. So yeah, how, like, where were you coming from? How did you come in contact with human design and Ra? Because for everyone listening, Dr. Eleanor knew personally and worked with Ra and validated certain parts of the human design system. So how did this come together for you?
Uh, well, to back up, my training is with the PhD from the University of Chicago that was out of the department called the Department of Human Development when I was there. It's now called Comparative Human Development. But it was the first integrative social science program that integrated sociology, biology, psychology, and anthropology. So I didn't know at the time, but it was the four worlds. And I was very adamant at the time when I was a graduate student that I didn't want to be a psychologist. I didn't want to, I thought psychologists were neurotic. And I didn't want to be one of them. But after teaching college for 3 years, I thought, this isn't what I want to do. I don't want to do research and just supervise students who do more research to supervise more students, and nobody actually benefits from the research or the skills they have. So it was really because of my children, and I was already a developmental psychologist and had studied with all these great people. And when my kids had a tantrum, I didn't know what to do.
Mhm.
And I thought, wait a minute, this isn't right. If I can't do it, how can we expect somebody without training to do it? And so I went and became a lead trainer in parent effectiveness training and organizational training and communication. And I got my license, then became a clinical psychologist, did a postdoc internship at Rush Presbyterian St. Luke's in Chicago. So I'm very traditionally trained in an untraditional way. And my dissertation had 295 variables. And that's important because I did a research study that the likes of which had never been done before. I did a study on religiosity, family interaction patterns, child rearing, and child guilt. And I asked the boys, I was interviewing 13-year-old boys, and I asked the boys about their personality. I didn't ask the parents about their children.
Mhm.
So it was a different kind of, I had a different attitude about research and its integrity. And so I finished my dissertation. I opened a private practice in Chicago, and I was licensed. And I started training as a Jungian analyst, which I had always wanted to do, and started transcendental meditation and had some Kundalini experiences. I didn't know
Mhm.
what they were, but I had always been psychic. And having those experiences set me on a path for about 6 to 8 years of learning how to control my psychic abilities,
Mhm.
how to look at somebody and not know everything about them, or not have traumas surface and distract me. So I did that. I also, in my first Kundalini experience, had a direct experience of God. And I was shown about religion and rebirth and relationships. And out of that experience, I wrote a book on divorce called Marriage in Trouble, A Time of Decision. And it was published. I mean, you know, the divine gives you something and you listen. So I was very much steeped in consciousness, psychology, Jungian typology, the tarot, which Jung talked about. Um, and at the same time, my consciousness was expanding. And I was studying astrology. I met my mentor astrologer, Catherine DeJersey, and she told me I'd move from Chicago. She told me when I met Marvin, my husband of 46 years, we met in India at Osho's ashram,
Which is
which is,
insane to me, which is so cool. I mentioned this when we first met. I was like, that's nuts too, because we did an episode where we looked at his human design chart. But anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
Uh, so the fact that I met Marvin at the ashram is an important piece, because that piece that we're sannyasin was a selling point for Ra to trust me, because many of the human design people were with Osho in Oregon. We never went to Oregon. 6 months after we were in India, we burned everything related to the ashram. When Osho was surrounded by bad people, we left. So I was doing my work. I was in private practice. I had done groups for 10 years, every 6 weeks, with like a whole weekend group from Friday night till Sunday night. I had a very busy practice. Marvin had a busy medical practice. And in 1996, I was reading my Mountain Astrologer magazine, and there was a picture of the mandala. And I went, I know what this is. And I already was studying the Tree of Life. So every piece that went into the human design system was something I was well versed in. And so I recognized the mandala, and I studied with Zeno. She happened to be in LA that weekend. I was living in Pacific Palisades, California, and she came to my home. I studied with her. Clearly, I'm a good student. And when I take on a task to study, most of the time I become a star pupil. So Zeno was very impressed with how quickly I understood. I knew the astrology, I knew the Tree of Life. And anyhow, I went to Taos in October of 1996. It was the first time Ra was teaching about circuitry. Circuitry did not exist when Ra was given the system by the voice, nor did type, nor did, and none of the constructs that became human design existed from the voice.
That's a really good note, because I was actually going to ask you something about that, especially because you have a particular note on profile that I wanted to touch on in a bit. But okay, cool.
Um, so I went to Taos. I studied human design. I took the exam, which Zeno assured me, oh no, there's no exam. And then I'm there in the course, and she says, oh, if you want to become an analyst, you have to take an exam. So I stayed an extra week. And of course, the first thing I did when I got to Taos to meet Ra was to spend a whole day with him, scheduling reading after reading after reading. So I booked him for a whole day, and I had him read my chart, Marvin's chart, my mother's chart, my sister's chart, my charts that I had hand done and progressed. So I had progressed the astrology and ran my charts for that. And
Mm.
all of that was hand calculated and done. And because we actually gave Chetan a ride from the airport. And while he was in the car with Marvin and me, I turned to him and I said, Chetan, what kind of name is that? And he said, I'm a sannyasin. Oh, we're sannyasin too. So Zeno, Chaitanya, Chetan, Marvin, and I, my sannyasin name is Asangato. And it means divine inconsistency.
Hmm.
And what Osho did understand about me was that I'm perfectly consistent, but I'm also changeable because I follow the spirit. And if God tells me to do something, I do it. I went to India because a voice said to me, go to Osho's ashram.
Mm.
Marvin and I lived less than a mile from each other, knew all the same people in LA, and had never met. And we've been together now since the day we met at the ashram.
Didn't your astrologer tell you too that that was the day you
The
met
day
him was the day you were
and
going to meet
time.
someone? That's so
Yeah.
fascinating.
And when I decided to go to India, I thought, that's crazy. What am I going to do in India? And I knew nothing about Osho.
Hmm.
As I boarded the plane to go to India, a client of mine ran up to me with a book, hammer on my head, and I open it and I see that Osho and I shared the same birthday. How
Hmm.
crazy is that? Anyhow, long story short, I went back to study with Ra, uh, and I invited him. I was there in the first class he taught about profile. Um, and I invited him to come visit us in the Palisades. And he took me up on that offer. And in September of 1997, Ra visited and stayed with us for 3 weeks in our home. And while he did, he told us all the stories about what a scoundrel he was. He was proud of it.
Jesus Christ.
That what Ra did before design was to sell things to old elderly people that didn't exist.
Hmm.
That's what he did. He had left uh, Canada, left his car at the airport, left his daughter and his stepson and his wife, and disappeared. They had him declared dead. So you have to understand that Ra was a messenger, and he brought us the human design system, but he was also a scoundrel, and he liked being a scoundrel.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
He
And
did.
if
He smoked nonstop. He was always high on marijuana. His history was as a druggie, using ketamine all the time.
mm,
And when he heard the voice, he was in Ibiza, living in a hut. And he had a dog named Barley. So Ross stayed with us. We had a nice relationship, a nice friendship. And my practice and Marvin's practice was so busy that he was booked every hour available for over 2 weeks. So we made a lot of cash. And he wanted to come back. And Zeno did not want him to come back. She didn't want him to come back because we got to spend all the time with him. But so she scheduled for Ra to come back in February of 1998. And it happened that my grandson was born prematurely a week before Ra arrived, very prematurely. 5 minutes longer without a C-section and my daughter and he both would have died. So I had just gone through a trauma. Ra was booked at a hotel, and I had sent one of my clients, and she was supposed to get a $25 discount, and they would not honor the discount. So I did not send anybody to Ra, and I was done. He charged my daughter full fee for the reading on my grandson. He scheduled to spend a day with me, and Zeno interfered with it. So there were a lot of reasons that I said, I'm out of this.
mhm.
And one of my classmates from the original class was Tom Pfeiffer. He had recorded he had bootlegged stuff and started recording things for me. And so I was completely out of human design, other than getting these tapes from Tom. And then in March of 1999, I got a phone call from Chetan asking if Ra could come, if we would host Ra and his family. He now had a baby who had been born prematurely, and he was bankrupt. And he had split with Zeno and Chaitanya. So he had nowhere to go except going back to Ibiza, and he didn't have money. So the ask was, would Marvin and I host him and his family and get him enough money in readings so he could go back to Ibiza? Marvin and I talked about it before we committed, and we agreed that the man was a scoundrel, but that the message he brought was valuable enough that we needed to say yes, that it was God's hand. So we said yes. Ra arrived in June of 1999 by himself. And he, after about a week of being with us, he asked if we would partner with him and if we would validate design scientifically. I said no. Marvin said yes. When Marvin said yes, let's do it, I said okay. And it meant I was going to validate it statistically. So Ra wanted a legal contract. We did form a legal contract. We were 50-50 partners. The contract was that he would share everything the voice told him in whatever amount of time it took, and we would record it. I have all those recordings. And that we would be the scientific arm geared toward professionals, not to the human design community. He wanted the human design community to be dumbed down. He said, you're not good, Eleanor, at dumbing it down to a 4th grade level. I'll do that. You do the professional stuff. And he didn't know what the dream design was. All he knew was that when his dog was there, he said to the voice, if this is a human design, what about my dog Barley? And the voice said, Barley has what would be like a human dream design. It's a 12-gate matrix that is the dream design. So I began working with it and realized that there's a big difference if somebody is sacrally defined in their human design chart and then loses the sacral when they go to sleep. Or if they have no sacral and they gain it when they go to sleep. That's a very different configuration in the personality. And so I taught the first Dream Rave class with Ra in attendance in November of 1999. And when we got out to the car, Ra said to me, oh, now I know what the dream design is. Now I can write some keynotes. So all of the guts of the human design was Ra's interpretation of what he was given. It was not, type, for example, was not something the voice gave him, nor did it give him circuitry, nor did it give him centers, because it gave him the body graph. Now, when I did the research on the initial 30,000 cases, what I found, type held, centers held. In other words, when I factor analyzed the centers, it's like if you were to think about color, and does one color relate to another color? they all have, we can code them all with RGB, for example. And we know that those are values that are incorporated in every color we can think of.
Mm-hmm.
When we do personality tests or intelligence tests, the way we know what a category is that when we do the statistics, they have certain things in common.
Mm-hmm.
In the body graph, the centers factored to each other themselves. In other words, the root center had 4 factors. The self center had 4 factors. The splenic center had 3 factors. The solar plexus had 3 factors. So I was able to look at the centers and say, yes, we have something here.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with type. I was able to get percentages on the human design type. I also have percentages now on the integrated chart. And what I found was that type held, and it held in all the matrices. Profile does not hold. Circuitry does not hold. Profiles are an artifact of the math, of the hexagrams. So you cannot, so what I use instead of the profile is the keywords that come with the hexagram.
Okay.
So if you look at somebody's process across the 8 charts that I use of the different time frames that programmed critical human development, those keywords describe your process.
Mm-hmm.
That's powerful, much more powerful than a number.
Yeah. And actually, I did want to, I mean, I know that there's more to this, but I did want to ask you personally, do you feel that you relate to being a 3-5 profile? Because in
No,
traditional
not at
you
all.
don't. Really
Not at
interesting,
all.
because from your story, I see it so much as a 3-5, like a life of testing, and like really going out and trying and then universalizing based on that. But it's interesting that you didn't feel connected to
I'm
that.
not, I am, according to my human design, a manifester,
Mm-hmm.
58, 48, 16.
Mm-hmm.
I kept saying to Ra, I'm not a manifester. I don't manifest. I wait. I wait. I wait. I wait. I wait. And then all of a sudden I know and I act.
So you don't think that that's like a manifestor waiting for an urge? So it feels like you're responding externally like a manifesting generator instead?
Mm-mm. No, I wait until I have the lunar confirmation, the
Mm.
spiritual confirmation. So you can come up with an explanation for that, how that happens in the human design chart. But in my multidimensional noble energy map, it's right there. I get the sacral center between the 52-9
Mm-hmm.
in my lunar chart. I get the 10 and I get the 57.
Mm-hmm.
So there are many things in my multidimensional noble energy map that I would have to stretch for to find in my human design chart.
Mm-hmm.
And the spiritual design, the dream design in the 64 gate matrix is what happens when we dream,
Mm-hmm.
because there's carryover between the unconscious and the conscious according to brain waves, so that the cortex does exist in the dream state while it does not in the dreams, in the sleep. Ra didn't know that there was a difference in sleep architecture. And the sleep architecture is multiple levels of brainwave frequencies as we go down into deep sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So part of the way I statistically validated my work was, as an astrologer, to verify the differences between my twin kittens by using the lunar minute calculation. So as I got those 4 mental, spiritual, emotional, and physical worlds, they track physiologically, psychologically, and astrologically, meaning they are reliable and valid from a statistical standpoint. And they do, in fact, show the development of a baby and the cosmic influences on that baby over a 3-month period.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually verify and document that the tree of life with its 4 worlds is valid. And so my real work is the 4 worlds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Which I mean, like I have like so many questions that branch off from your story because it is a life story and fascinating. And again, I asked Dr. Eleanor if maybe one day she'd be willing to come back and talk more about it. But I'd love
I'm
to dive.
happy to do that.
Ah, yay. Well, I have you saying that on recording that I'm publishing. So but yeah, so basically you went in and you did work that really no one had done with this system before, which was actually going out and validating this scientifically and finding out, which is so important too, because you know, I obviously did not know Ra personally. He died when I was 16. But it's the kind of thing where, when I've heard him talk before, I've very much felt the same way that you and Marvin felt, which was, and I'm assuming this is why Marvin said yes to like, we will do this work because he saw, like you did, that there's a core, there's a nugget of truth to this, a big nugget. But it has always felt like there were certain things you have to take from Ra with a big grain of salt, considering who the channel for this was, because and Sean mentioned this on his podcast interview with him that I was watching the other day, which was there's so much out there in the human design space of like, you're wrong, this is right, or like, I'm right, what you said was wrong over there because that's pop human design, or this isn't right, this isn't what Ross said. That's the big thing, people like having a breakdown over Ra didn't say exactly that.
A
And I
lot
think
of what Ross said isn't true.
exactly. Like, was it what the voice said, right? Because, when you get down to the core of it, to his numinous experience, numinous being a word I learned from you, actually, I had no clue what that was before you said it. So this direct experience of God, that sounds like something I'm like, that sounds true to me. Like that resonates with me. But then the more structured and formal way that human design goes, like I love it. And personally, a lot of what I've used in my readings has really helped people. It's helped me, even if profile technically is an artifact. I really relate to being a 5/1. It's helped me in my life. But it's just, I think it's a really, really good thing to keep in mind that, like you said, he was a messenger. And actually my friend, she was laughing. She was like, I think that God gives these messages to people who like are kind of off their rocker, so we remember not to put them on a pedestal, right? And to remember it's about the message and not about the person.
Well, I would say, in terms of human design, the only really accurate materials are the Black Book and the White Book.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was the original writing. Now, there was some piecing together of the information that Ra did. But for example, Ra says in the Black Book, and was adamant, we have no choice. That's bullshit. A baby at 3 months old has choice, reaches for an object. If you reach for X object rather than Y object, you're making a choice. And so just at a very basic level, we can say, wait a minute, let's be discriminating and discerning about what we take in and what we use and what we don't. And certainly, I have to say, some of the, I wrote 13 books with Ra. And I've completely forgot about them. And then I pulled them out a few months ago, and I'm going through them and writing a commentary on what scientifically held and what didn't. And I've had Marvin go through and do that medically. Because, for example, the research did show, statistically documented, that there is no difference in the frequency of heart attacks if you have an open or a defined heart center. No difference. So Ra saying to people, if you have a defined heart center, you're more prone to have a heart attack, or an open, I don't remember which it was, but it's not true. And so part of my reluctance to release the statistics in their raw form was that many of the human design people wanted me to use the statistics to validate what Ra said, and they were willing to misinterpret them to make him right. And I came out of the University of Chicago, a very prestigious university, and I watched them fudge data so they could get Head Start money. And I saw the Larry Kohlberg fudge moral development data to get money. And that is not right. So I won't do that. The data is the data. And I welcome other people going through the machinations necessary to do the research. It was not easy. You know, I had to code everything astrologically and export it and import it and export it. And it was a major undertaking. And the things I found are set my work on the course of the four worlds.
Mm-hmm.
And the integration of the pieces of knowledge that are part of this body graph.
Yeah.
And
oh, sorry to interrupt. I was just about to say, you are one of the only people I know with human design who actually knows the Kabbalah, knows about the tree of life. We talked about that in my reading too. And I mean, I know that Ra had said, like, we don't really need that, right? Which is a little silly since it's a foundational part of the system. But
well, Ra looked at my bookcase one day up in my office. We had bookcases in the room he was staying in, ceiling to floor. And then in my office, I had lots of books and a whole bookcase of astrology books, because I have studied many different forms of astrology. And Ra looked at my bookcase one day. He said, "You can get rid of all those astrology books." And I looked at him and I said, "Ra, there is no way that I am getting rid of these books. The human design chart is a synthesis, and people learning human design need to know astrology. As a base, I mean, how can you read a sun sign without knowing the astrological underpinnings? And the degrees make a difference. So, yeah, I have knowledge of all of the component parts. And look at this. The tree of life has 32 paths of intelligence. Multiply that by 12, 384. The number of lines in the I Ching are 384. That means there's a correlation between every path of intelligence and every astrological sign.
mm-hmm.
Now, we can get there by doing some internal maneuvering and expansion of the astrological system. That's one of my tasks.
And what you came here to do, which is a fantastic segue into talking more about what the four worlds actually are and what true integrated chart looks like through the system that you have worked on. So in human design, we take two times. We take the time of birth and then 3 months before that to create a combined chart. That's the one that you're looking at, everyone listening, when you're looking at your human design chart after you put your birth information in. And so Dr. Eleanor has a different expanded version of this. And what you said is the real integrated chart, which takes more times into account. So can we talk a little bit about why you did that and what more information this gives us?
The reason I did it was because Ra gave me the dream design.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that's a dream design of a mammal. Well, if that's the dream design, where's the sleep design? And if it's the dream design of a human, where's the sleep design of a human? And in talking about the sleep architecture, which I did in a webinar, I did in a, not a webinar, in a seminar I did with Ra in Sedona, and I will republish that book, because in there he talked about the importance of integrating the matrices. And so I knew there was another design. And as an astrologer, I was sort of, how do I figure this? We know that the spiritual design, the dream design, is 88 lunar degrees. So when I had twin kittens, one who died at age 10 of cardiomyopathy, the other lived to 18. So there was a difference. I needed to find that difference in the physical chart. And so I used the lunar minute, which took it to seconds. And I had also downloaded the emotional angelic matrix. So we have a mental world matrix that's 64 gates,
Mm-hmm.
a spiritual that's 12, an emotional angelic, which is 33, has no solar plexus. Solar plexus only exists in the mental world and the physical world. So emotional reactions are a mental physical world, and the spiritual angelic matrix through the portal gate 59 is there for us to transform the emotions of the third dimensional reality into spirituality and understanding and growth.
Mm-hmm.
So we have four matrices. I laid them out that way, and they chart developmental times in human development. So if you look at the mandala, 360-degree circle, and you go 88 degrees before birth, and then it goes to birth, quarter of the wheel, and then it goes to when you were 3 months old, the missing fourth trimester, when you reach and have choice, 180 degrees. And then the Earth's gone the other 180 degrees. So by the time a baby is 3 months old, every single cosmic frequency has been programmed into the aura. So as we know in psychological human development, by the time a baby is 3 months old, all the structures they need to be whole exist. They are there, able to function, independent of anyone else except developmental caretaking.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't need somebody telling them what to think. They need to be educated and socialized, but not conditioned. Babies are not conditioned. So I object to Ra using the term conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
Because conditioning means you are automatically doing something that you've been programmed to do. And the socialization process, we are being taught what our culture expects of us. And we're given choice on how we participate. We're not robots. And I can say, as a clinician, having been in private practice for 50 years, that every single person who came to me with psychological issues needed healing on their soul. It's not that they didn't know who they were. It's not that they didn't know what they want. It's that they were ignored. The sensitive part of who they are was not acknowledged or recognized. Now, in human design, we say a projector wants to be recognized. As a parent, what you want to do for your children is you want to teach them to know who they are for themselves. You don't want them being dependent on something outside of them to give them all four worlds.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was standing at my husband's bedside in October of 2022, he had open heart surgery. And one night he said to me, I feel like there's a negative force around. So I said, get into bed and I'll put on a Jim Gore prayer, a cleansing prayer. And I was standing there and I was doing Tai Chi Gong figure eights. And we go from the mental to the physical, to the spiritual, to the emotional. And the voice said to me as I was doing this, your layout of the charts is the four worlds. You know what it is. It's time to make it public. So I'd been making it public for 25 years, for 22 years. And nobody, I had a following, but it was invisible. And I went to my Tai Chi group and I said, the voice just told me to make my chart, my noble energy maps public. 10 to 15 people signed up for readings that night. And it just exploded. And then I began to do webinars and talk a little bit more about it. And then 3 people in a few, right around the time I met Sean was one of them. 3 people within a 2-week period called and asked me for the statistics on the human design system. And when I explained it to them, they understood the integrated chart.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been working with the body graph chart people to do the Noble Energy Map program, which anybody listening to the podcast can go on nobleenergymaps.com and download a free report with all the charts.
And you might be surprised at what you see. Might be interesting. You also might see something that you have always kind of thought you might have had or been like wishing you had, which is also this is so something for, excuse me, this is so a different conversation, but like Ra actually ended up having something in his integrated chart that he always wished he had, right? It was is it gate 16 or the full channel 1648 that he'd always wished he'd had, and it turns out he actually did. So interesting. But yeah, and so for those people who are a little bit more lay people, such as myself, when I was learning this from Dr. Eleanor, I was like, I can tell this is a beautiful system and I want to know it more, but man, I gotta take some time to absorb this. I mean, essentially the idea here is
my system is simpler than human design.
Okay.
It's much simpler because when you're looking at these charts, you look at what connects and where it connects and which world connects. So for example, I'm a manifestor 58, 18, 48, 16, which means I know frequency and I can read frequency in people. but I wait. And so when I get the sacral center in my spiritual design and in my integrated, I have the 515 as a whole channel. That's my timing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm infinitely patient. I waited 22 years to go public with the four worlds.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't mean I wasn't studying and learning that each world has its own unique communication. So, for example, when I'm working with couples and they're going at it with each other, if I identify which world each of them is in, I know how to bring them together.
Mm-hmm.
So I've actually analyzed the integrated charts and the 8 charts that go into it in relationships, and can see in some of, I had one really interesting case where I was seeing this couple early on before they separated. And one of the sessions was him being so abusive in the meeting that it was no wonder they separated. And she remained my client and they became friends. And about 6, 8 months ago, I said to my female client, let's look at your design. I'll bet we can see in there what the issue was. And sure enough, they started out in their relationship spiritually aligned. And then he went solely into the mental world because he became very rich.
Mm-hmm.
And he went into money and power and completely gave up on the spiritual values.
Mm-hmm.
And the communication skills of each world are different. So, in order to access spirit, you need to use clean language. Whereas to access the mental world, you might use active listening. So, part of my job and mission here is to write a book about the four worlds and how to communicate in each world. And that's what I've been working on.
That's fascinating. And what I wanted to say about this was just to kind of help people make a little bit more of a cohesive image, especially because some of the people listening are coming from a human design background. So getting into like a kind of a new, just like thinking of it in a new framework. Basically, part of what Dr. Eleanor is saying is that like these four worlds, like technically we live in all of them. And I mean, from what you're saying, we might shift between them, but we have access to them. And it's part of it is being aware of that fact, right? So in my I think this is what you were kind of getting at when you were talking about the sleep and the dream rave. You were saying that we carry over from the unconscious or the sleeping or dreaming over to the conscious, and that it's because this is a world that's still like one of the things to take into account. It's not like this just goes away just because we're not sleeping anymore. Like it's still a
Well,
part of us.
I believe that the spiritual world, the lunar world,
Mm-hmm.
is the unifying integrative field of consciousness.
Okay.
Because when we are in deep sleep, we're in the cosmic soup. We have no ajna, we have no crown, we have no throat. We have no throat. We do have a throat. We have the 2057, but we don't speak, right? We act, and mammals can act. A dog can act, but it's not thinking ahead and planning ahead the way we do. So when we dream, the unconscious of the whole collective is being imprinted into our cortex. And the reason we don't remember dreams fully is that the dream has no language and it has to translate during REM. That hour and a half of REM is when the movement between worlds happens.
Hmm.
But the spiritual values are what people will die for. And the hurt that I've seen in my clients through the years is that that spiritual core has not been recognized. It's
Mm.
not the mental core. It's not who they think they are. It's who they really feel they are.
Yeah.
That is important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because I remember in my one-on-one reading with you, you were saying you lose the 57 that you have at some point. And I was like, okay, so I this is my entire integrated chart and this is who I am. So I always have the 57. So what do you mean by I lose it? And you said it's when you're not aware of that part of who you are. So when you're not aware that you exist in that world. And I don't have my map up in front of me, but I think it might be in the emotional that I have the 57, but I know it's definitely not in my traditional human design, the mental world, right? And you were saying like, yeah,
But you know,
basically,
you are intuitive.
I would say so.
So how do you explain the intuition in a human design chart that doesn't have the 57?
I always just felt instinctual because gate 57 was described as, yeah, intuitive clarity, but more like foresight. Like you get little snips of what's going to happen. So maybe not necessarily clairvoyance, but some kind of future psychic. And for me, I was always like, well, I have gate 44, which is a sense of patterns emerging. And then also like if somebody is really right for me or not. 32, will it work or will it not work? And that's actually kind of why I had a problem with 57 being called intuition, because I was like, aren't all of these forms of intuition?
Which is a really important point that you're making, because the way I read a chart is the flow of energy and not labeling in a way that I'd rather ask somebody, how do you experience an energy of intuition, than to tell them what intuition is. When you know what you know, how do you know it? Is a
Mm,
better question than, you know, I mean, letting somebody with 57 know that they know because they know is really important. And when I see somebody with the 515 or even, yeah, usually any of the channels through the center, I usually say to a parent of a child, you might think your child is stubborn. Your child is not stubborn. Your child is standing up for what he or she knows is right for him. Honor it.
hmm Yeah, I wish my parents had heard that about my channel 360 and said I was just labeled as stubborn to this day. Oh gosh, I love that so much. And I know we have limited time left, but I wanted to quickly ask you about these. You said that certain channels are doors or portals to other worlds. I know that you
Mhm.
mentioned that 5818 is one, correct? And then
Oh,
59.6?
no, 5818 is not a portal.
It's not? Okay.
It's a channel of frequency.
Got it.
Ra said that the 5818 related to a parent and negative stuff with the parent. I have not witnessed that at all. I have that channel. I didn't have a problem with my parents, and I see it as frequency in the tree of life. It's judgment. It's what work on what has been spoiled. So you know if the frequency is aligned or not. So in terms of the portals, the 12 is a portal to the spiritual world. So is the 19, and so is the 62.
Hmm.
And those portals, in my channel book, I wrote every iteration of every channel.
Hmm.
So there are different worlds. For example, the biggest portal is the 59th hexagram, the 59th gate, because it's the only link between the solar plexus and the emotional world. So the 6 in the solar plexus, when someone is emotionally reactive, if someone has the 59, they become a transformer for that emotional energy.
Hmm.
because they have the matrix that takes it to a higher spiritual level.
Okay.
The other portals, there's the 32 is a portal between the 54 and the 32 being in the physical world, the 54 being in the physical and the emotional world and the mental world. So, for someone like you, when you set goals, you need to make sure those goals are realistic physically and are healthy for you. Because if a goal in the 32 doesn't resonate with your physiology, you're not going to do it, even though you won't consciously be aware that it's because of that.
So if it doesn't feel healthy to my body, and then subconsciously it'll like
don't even, I'd say write down what your goals are and then take them into meditation and ask your physical body, your physical self, am I in the right place with this? Is this a goal that resonates on all levels of my being? You don't want to be in service of the mental world, because you could set a goal that would put you at physical risk, but your competitive spirit in the real world might say, go do it, push yourself. And then you get hurt.
Yeah. That's so interesting. That is something I was actually just talking to my coach about this, because like we both love what we do and we both want to obviously maintain a living by doing that. But we're like, making a certain amount of money as my goal does not do it for me. And it's just like, I can't even like physically get into that, it doesn't feel aligned, and it's not a motivator. It's not like the correct kind of goal for me. So it's funny that you say that.
I can give you a good example of how it works.
Yeah, please.
I'm going to be teaching 2 tracks of classes. One is a human design practitioner 4-world class, and one is a 4-world class and noble energy map for personal use. And I was thinking of these 2 classes, and the more I thought about it, one night I went, I can't use a curriculum. I can't promise what's going to happen. And I don't want more than 12 people in a class. I need to know my people. I need to know who they are. I need to know what they need to know. I need to look at the designs and see how to frame my material. And once I went, oh, this is who I am, this is how I have to do it, then everything falls into place. So it has to come from core.
Yeah. We should put that on a bumper sticker. It has to come from core. I love that.
Well, it's the spiritual world. And the spiritual world is a week before and a week after birth. So it's a 2-week period. And there's a lot of physiologic and core things that happen in that 2-week period. You get born, you attach to a human, and spirit gets anchored in you. The who you become is now set. And paying attention to that is, in my view, equally important to all of the other designs we look at.
Yeah, I'm going to go back and I'm already going to go back and look at my noble energy wellness map, but I'm for sure going to look at that in particular. I think I did. My eye was like very drawn to that before because I knew it was important. But yeah, gosh, well, this has been incredible. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. And you have some really amazing resources coming up for people that will be available for them. So, you have your book, and then you also have a 5-day course coming too. Do you mind sharing?
A Step Over the Threshold to a New Way of Being in 5 days. It's an experience over 5 days of the 4 worlds. Each day you get an experience of one world. And on the fifth day, you integrate them. And each day is maybe about 10 minutes of videos that are pre-recorded by me. And you're given a task. The first day is spirit. Second day is physical. Third day is emotional. Fourth day is mental. And fifth day is integrated. And it does not require more than 30 to 40 minutes of your time in any given day. Every day you can answer the question for the world on Facebook. And I'm giving out a prize each day to some random winner. And then on the fifth day, the prize is a full reading with me, an hour reading with me. And that will be for somebody who's answered questions each day.
Love it. That's so cool. I love that format. And then what I'm also so excited for is that your book is out and people can come and can get it.
Well, I have more than one book out.
Yeah, you have many books.
I have many books, but this is the most recent, which is all of the integrated channels. And it is beautifully integrated. So for example, the 1156 exists in two worlds.
Nice.
And it has the astrology as well as the hexagrams. And the other book, Cosmic Secret, Cosmic Guidance, is broken down into advice for each day in each of the worlds based on the astrology of the day.
Oh, very, very cool. Yeah, I love that. I'm so glad I'm learning astrology more now so I can dive into this in a new way.
Covering that in my classes. I'm going to start teaching 2 classes at the end of the month. And they're going to be ongoing, a human design practitioner one and a 4 worlds one. And they will include the synthesis of the tree of life and astrology and the I Ching and developmental psych and psychology, the 4 worlds.
Thank God, because that would be a lot for me to learn on my own. So I'm glad that you're combining it into a package. But wonderful. And I'll have all of Dr. Eleanor's information for getting in touch with her below. But I do have one last question for you, which is, what is one thing that is bringing you so much joy right now?
Well, there are so many things. But my work brings me great joy. I love what I do. I do what I love. I don't need to do it. I've done it my whole life. And honestly, I've never made a choice in my life based on money. I've made it based on what I love. And so I've never worked. I do what I love. And I love writing. So that's my mode of expression.
I'm the same way. I love podcasting. It's something that I fell into, but writing is definitely my first love. So I feel you there. But wonderful. Thanks again so much for coming on. You rock. Everyone listening, you rock. And I will talk to you next time.